Okey-dokey, we're recording.
Great, thanks, Caleb. Hey, everybody, welcome to our regular October Trainers Consortium call. This month, we're going to have our regular updates. Then we have a special guest, John Ackerly, to talk about some stuff he's been working on with wood stoves and safety inspections and some questions for you. So I hope you'll unmute and engage or use the chat when we get to that part. And then if there's time after that, Amanda Hatherley has graciously agreed to do another Camtasia tutorial because I had been getting a few notes from people and it came up in some of the instructional design workshops. So thought if we had a few minutes at the end, it wouldn't be bad to get a refresher. And since we're recording them now, we'll have it for posterity. So with that, I'll kick off to the regular network updates. A few people aren't here, so I'll be picking up the updates from Oak Ridge and NREL. And I think, Anna, you might have to leave early, so why don't you go with your updates first, and then Amy, and then Jonathan.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. This is Anna Sullivan from IREC. My quick update today, we're continuing to provide support to weatherization training centers and instructors who are going through our credentialing program. We are catching up from a big summer backlog. So a lot of you who have applications in should now be at the process where assessors are getting assigned. I know that we have some instructor applications that are still in review, but we are catching up. So thank you all for your patience. I just had a quick reminder for our accredited training providers and anyone who is considering applying to consult our candidate handbook, which is on our website. If you are thinking of engaging in some kind of affiliation with another training provider out of state who is not accredited. A reminder that IREC has a process in place already. If you wish to either update your existing credential or to apply with an affiliate as part of your training program accreditation. And I know that as we look at training program expansion with the anticipated stimulus, we're going to be all needing to provide as much training to as many new employees as possible, and I wanted to remind everyone that there is a process in place if you need to establish that type of relationship in regards to your accreditation. So please reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat if you have any questions about that. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. That's a really good and timely reminder. Does anyone have any questions about that? Or I guess if you do, you can reach out, but if there are any kind of overarching questions, speak now. Okay, looks like none. Interested to see how that plays out. So I think I said Amy English from CAP. Do you want to go next with updates for the gang?
Sure. I'm in the car right now, so there might be some background noise. We are having a webinar tomorrow to launch our fall, to kick off our fall webinar series, and there are going to be 3 weatherization-related webinars for October, November, and December. One is highlighting agency in New Hampshire. One is highlighting an agency in Detroit, and the other one is highlighting Omaha. So I'll forward those. Once we get those posted, we'll get those out, those links to the, what's it called, to the listserv. And we're continuing to promote Weatherization Month. We did put our Weatherization Month toolkit up on the website. And that's about it. That's the only thing I can think of right now.
Okay, thanks. And just to add a bit to the teaser about the webinars, I know those topics that you mentioned when we were talking would be of specific interest to some in this group. One of the topics is going to be using braiding funding sources to be able to offer better salaries to help with attracting and retaining.
Yeah, if you'd like, I can elaborate if you'd like. I didn't know how much time to allot to it.
Yeah, just real quick, just a little teaser.
Sure. So October 27th is DMCAP, which is Belknap, Merrimack counties in New Hampshire, and he's going to talk about braided funding for recruitment and retention of workforce. We're very excited to have a workforce one. He's using multiple revenue streams to guarantee higher pay, and working with vocational high schools and community colleges to recruit young people that are trying to start their careers. So the pay that he's able to offer is consistent, and it's above average for an entry-level position. And they partner on they provide a lot of, the agency provides a lot of free training and support, financial support for certification and stuff. So that's going to be a good one. November 10th is with Shama Mounzer from Wayne Metro in Detroit. She's going to talk about specific 2 revenue streams that they're using to target roof repairs to reduce deferrals, and roof repairs are a big topic, of course. And then the December 22nd one is with Habitat for Humanity of Omaha, and I'm kind of excited about that one as well because Habitat is not a community action agency, and for us at NCAP to connect with the WAP subgrantees that are not community action agencies is always kind of a treat. So they're going to talk about it's very interesting. So there's 2 speakers, and they're going to talk about like the pathways of the intake pathways for weatherization, because being that it is Habitat for Humanity, they have a number of different programs, and they're all integrated under their home repair umbrella. And so there are actually 4 different programs through which a given client can enter their intake system. And then they're going to talk about the term that they use is stacking the funds. She's not familiar with the term braiding, which is what traditionally we would call it at NCAP. So she's going to talk about how they stack funds on a given project in order to maximize the services that they can offer. And yes, I'm excited. They all sound like good. And I just put the call out there as well that we're getting ready to start scheduling our 2022 webinar series, and I've worked internally to make sure that there are placeholders for plenty of energy webinars. So if you've got if you come across any good tales like that, let me know, because I'd like to get those booked out further in advance. It was kind of a scramble getting the fall set together.
Great, thanks, Amy. And I know since you're in the car, I'll go ahead and put your email in the chat so that if anyone has ideas or contacts or anything, they can just send it your way. So everyone should see that now.
That would be great. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. And I think last up of our network updates before I go is Jonathan. Do you want to jump in?
Yes. Hello. A very good day to you all. So
good
for
day
the
to you, good sir.
to you and yours. So for the NASCAS update, we recently hosted our annual training conference that was held September 20th through 23rd. It was virtual. We had a lot of content from DOE and from the network. For those of you that registered, all the sessions will be uploaded into the conference platform and will be available for 6 months. And we have announced the dates for our winter training conference, which will be virtual again, and that will be February 28th through March 3rd. Regarding the legislative front, we continue to monitor the progress of the WAP stimulus packages, the WAP stimuli, and the infrastructure package and the reconciliation/build back better. If you're anything like me, you're trying to track these and they change the names of them every day. So essentially for stimulus, there's 2 packages at $3.5 billion, one in infrastructure and one in the Build Back Better package, which is the reconciliation as well. We are continuing to advocate for the priorities of our network, for items such as the weatherization readiness funding, increase to the ACPU, adequate timeframes to spend the funds, Davis-Bacon waivers and increases to DOE's TNTA funding. Later this month, on October 28th, we will be hosting, along with our friends at NCAP and NCAF, the Weatherization Day virtual Hill event. This year, we're celebrating 45 years of crushing it in the WAP, so thank you to all of you. It's kind of an exciting time in weatherization these days. So we're putting the final touches on this event, securing speakers and so forth. Registration links will come out soon, but if you want to put a placeholder on your calendar, it will be October 28th from 11 a.m. to shortly after 1 p.m. Eastern time. And then the last thing I want to bring up is NASCASP is looking to expand our contracted training and technical consultants. So if you would like to throw your hat in that ring, there is a form that you can fill out. It's on our website. The link is also in these notes that I submitted to Kelly, so you'll probably find them when the notes come out. They're also in the e-news blasts that we put out bi-weekly. So I think that's just about it for me. So thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. And as you were talking, I did put the part from your notes about if people are planning a Weatherization Day event to add it to your Google Sheet. And then I'm also going to, this is the NASCASP consultant, what would you call it, application form or something?
Yeah, that sounds about right to me.
There it is. So for those of you interested, you can grab all those links in the chat right now, and they will also be in the notes. So before we jump into John Ackerly, updates from my end. Reminder to everyone, I forwarded you the application to be on the Energy Auditor and QCI Certification Scheme Committee, which NREL is reconstituting for the regular, every 5 to 7 years, we're supposed to update and make sure all those things are keeping up with our technology and practices. And so if you're interested, please apply. The deadline is October 15th, so you still have a few days. You remember the way they then make their selection is they try to get a nice cross-section of people with different levels of experience from different geographic regions. So the committees are usually really, really interesting groups to work with. So that's going on. And Bill Ekman, previously of Santa Fe, but now of Oak Ridge, wanted me to extend a big thank you to all of you who attended the Train the Trainer about the energy audit software last week or the week before, and remind you that he had sent out a follow-up email with some kind of survey questions to get a sense of what all worked well for you, what didn't, what they could offer in the future. So remind you of that. I feel like there must be more, but it's all just stuff in the works. So that's pretty much it for my updates. I didn't see anyone from BPI on. Anyone from BPI, any updates?
Hi, Kelly. Yeah, no, we have no updates at this time. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Okay, I see you. You're on my second page. Great. Well, with that, John Ackerly has graciously joined us today. John has been working a lot on Woodstove safety and working with auditors, not just weatherization auditors, but the broader home performance industry. And so with that, John, I will let you take it away.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Yes, I'm John Ackerly. Hi, everyone. I sat in on one of your earlier calls, but I'm very new to this network and really appreciate Kelly inviting me to give a short presentation. And also, I mean, mainly I want to ask all of you if you think wood stoves are being well accounted for in your audits. And Kelly and I have been spending some time trying to think about how to improve that. Just a little bit.
Sorry, I just don't want to get off on a confusing foot for everyone. Not audits, but the site inspections.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, learning the proper terminology has also been a little challenging for me. So anyway, I run a small nonprofit. We're actually the only nonprofit in the United States that focuses solely on wood stoves. And so we do a lot of, we work with the EPA and DOE. Most of our funding comes from DOE. And we're trying to automate the wood stove and get computers in there so we can get them to be far cleaner than they are today. And we also are hoping that EPA can get some better regulations in place so that stoves will be cleaner and still be affordable. So anyway, I started dabbling in the home performance world and energy audit world, and then I ended up started talking to BPI. This back in 2013, and they were I think they also realized that there was a big gap here, and there was no consistent way to inspect a wood stove like there is to inspect a furnace. And there's a lot of reasons, for that. And so actually we went through a pretty lengthy process with BPI, and we ended up with a voluntary Annex J that is a great tool for energy auditors to learn how to properly inspect a wood stove. And of course, this is all supposed to happen in like 5 minutes because we know energy auditors have tons of stuff to look at in the home. But then apparently BPI is not really aware that anyone's used it, and we aren't either. We can't really find that this thing has really been used much. And so we're trying to go back and see how we can work with various networks and institutions to get it more integrated. And I mean, in general, for instance, most of my friends that had audits, and these are not, WAP audits, but very few, it's very, very common that an energy auditor walks in the house, does their audit, and does not look at the wood stove. And that's often because the program they have doesn't account for it, so there's no way to put in any data. So we are trying to, okay, there it is. Yeah, Annex J, thanks, Kelly. And we worked with John, what's his name? Kelly, what's John's last name? Yes.
Jones? Yeah.
John Jones, yeah. He's been great to work with, and we've been back in touch with him more recently. And then, so actually it was John and I. John said, well, you should call Derek Schrader at DOE. So I called Derek, and Derek was like, oh, okay, looks like there's a little work to do here. So he turned me over to Kelly. So Kelly then asked me to put together, and I'll share my screen. Kelly asked me to put together a visual. Where is it? Do you see my screen now? No.
No, I can pull it up if you'd like. I have it up.
Okay. Yeah, sure. When you put it up.
Okay.
And Kelly, how much time do we have? I don't want to go through. I mean, one of the main things I wanted to do is just to get feedback from you all to see whether you think there is room or a need for more training on inspecting wood stoves. And I know this is, somewhat a regional thing. If you live in, where Kelly lives, or in a lot of the North, wood stoves are in every other home. Literally, they're in half of homes in a lot of communities. Of course, way down south, that's not the case. So it's somewhat regional. And of course, a lot of wood stoves are, secondary heaters, but still can burn houses down if they are not safely installed, or if they haven't been, if the chimney hasn't been swept. So maybe let me take a pause here and see. I'd love to get, I don't know, Kelly, does that make sense to, before I go through this? I mean, I don't think we need to go through this in too much detail.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Let's see. So I think you were going to ask.
Yeah, I was going to ask if folks think there is more of a need for kind of some more consistent guidance on how wood stoves should be inspected, and whether folks think that wood stoves are being inspected well enough. And if so, I'm curious how, what guidance you all offer to the people that you train in terms of wood stoves. And when I say wood stoves, I also include pellet stoves.
So I see we have a few people from northern climates. So anyone want to weigh in here? Is this something on your data collection forums? Do you train for it? Zach wrote in the chat, yes, we would like more guidance. Jeff is already asking for copies of this. He said they're about to implement a program where they install new wood and pellet stoves. Haven't had much training, so this is really timely.
Oh,
Jeff
great.
is in Vermont.
Great.
Anyone on the Wisconsin crew willing to let us know how it goes there?
This is Mary from Wisconsin.
Hi, Mary.
Hello. We'll look at the wood stove. I guess we have a lot of wood stoves, and actually wood, any kind of heating system in Wisconsin, especially in the northern part of the state. So we're going to look at it. We'd also take into account how much wood they're burning when we look at their energy usage. Because that would all come to play, say, if you were going to replace it with something else, to be able to size the heating system properly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other piece is, looking at it for health and safety reasons.
And so just specifically for the health and safety stuff, something John and I have been talking about that I wasn't sure, but as an example, I know when I was going out in the field a lot, I would see the technicians test for gas leaks, but if there wasn't a gas leak, they would never indicate that on the form. And it kind of became like one of my pet issues for a while of, and from a liability standpoint, we should really be documenting that we did test and it was fine. There was no leak. And I'm wondering if the health and safety inspections of wood stoves is a similar thing where they are getting looked at, but there's just like nothing in the paperwork that shows that. Do you have a sense about that? Is it, if we were to go back and look at homes inspected a year ago, would we know that they had done a health and safety inspection on the wood stove?
In Wisconsin, we have another in our health and safety checklist is called other. So if there's a wood stove, not only is the wood stove looked at to be set up to PMI, but also the NFPA, also with the non-burnable materials around it, and the chimney is inspected from the bottom up for proper chimney for that wood stove, and dual heat sources not going into that chimney.
And you're getting more in the chat, John. Sorry. Bruce said we'd appreciate more on this. He's in North Dakota. Great topic. Steve asks, what are the issues surrounding carbon monoxide in wood stoves as secondary heat sources?
Sure, yeah. So actually carbon monoxide is rarely an issue with wood stoves, believe it or not. There's, there's usually, I mean, stove should have a good draft. So if there is CO in the home, you should also be smelling a lot of smoke. So it's not a silent killer like it can be with gas. The CO and wood stoves are an issue on boats and in extremely small places. If the flue does reverse, if you get if somehow at the very end of the burn, the gases start going down the chimney instead of up, and there's still a bed of coals, then you can have a CO issue, but that's very rare. And it's also, the house has to be really pretty tight for it to be a CO problem. Most houses are plenty leaky, which is of course what we're trying to change. Mm-hmm. But in general, PM is an issue, you know, just having particulates in your house. It's much worse with regular fireplaces than wood stoves. Fireplaces are really bad. They often smell up the house.
More in the chat to you. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so Andy, Duncan, that's so true. You know, when you can't, there's no point in having in fact, it would be worse to have the stove burning when you inspected it, because you do need to open the door and look inside. And also it gets in the way of the other stuff you're doing. Of course, if you're doing a blower door test, you don't want to can't have wood stove on. There's not that much you could learn from the stove being on, but it's very easy to inspect, and I guess pretty quickly. So in this we list a few things, and including is if you see the scrolling across the screen, you know, it's one thing that's really important. Go to the outside of the house, look up at the chimney, and see how much creosote was there. And that's actually a question I have for you all. If you know whether chimney cleanings are an eligible expense, because that's one of the most common problems, especially for low-income families, is not cleaning the chimney. And that's what can present the biggest fire hazard, of course, because that's all creosote that can burn pretty quick and cause a chimney fire. And so that's
is anyone
one thing
aware of? Alan said in Washington, their program can pay for inspections and cleaning, so that's good. Yeah, I think it's definitely it would qualify as a health and safety measure, but I'm not sure if people are actually doing it.
Yeah. I'm very glad to see so many people in the chat saying that more resources are welcome. I guess, and it's easy for us to distribute more resources. We're also hoping that the forms that you use could be updated to include some more detail on stoves, you know, as you include furnaces or boilers. Because like Kelly said, part of it is making, you know, having a record to know whether certain things on the stove were checked.
Alan wrote that they do have a form. I wonder, Alan, do you know, I know Michael's a real taskmaster, but would he let you share that? And I'm being totally silly. He's not. Would you be able to share the Washington solid fuel burning appliance inspection form?
Yeah, actually, Washington, I think we found that, and that's one of the few, and it is a good one.
Oh, that's a good. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I think Oregon used to have one. I don't know if they still maintain it.
This is Michael.
Amanda had it.
Yeah, we do have a form.
Go ahead.
Oh, great.
I think John Krieger with Saturn helped us develop it several years ago.
And here's something from Rana saying, wondering about combustion air feeds. Actually, I think Washington State requires a dedicated outside air supply. And that's the only state that does it. Most of the professionals that install stoves don't recommend an outside air supply unless this house is really tight. And the tighter a house gets, the more likely you are. And most stoves do, you can get these kits. It's not too expensive to put a hole in the wall and suck some fresh air right into the back of the stove. One problem is some of them, they suck cold air into the house and it leaks around the stove and doesn't just go into the stove. That's one reason why some of the stove install professionals don't like to use them, because it's not an efficient connection into the stove. And stoves actually use a little less air than a lot of people would think. Now, I should know the number, how much air they draw. And pellet stoves draw even less, but it's not a huge amount of air. Once the stove gets started, the first 15 minutes, folks leave the door open, as the owner's manual instructs, because you need a lot of air to get the stove going. So you are sucking a lot of indoor air. But once you close that door, you don't need too much air.
Good. I'm just reading through the chats to make sure we aren't missing anything. But yeah, it looks like these resources are very welcome and timely. Should we pull up the rubric now, John?
Sure. And just on this, Kelly, I don't know if you folks would be willing to look this over for us before it's a draft for right now. I mean, it's generally, my colleague at the Chimney Safety Institute of America has also gone through it. But I guess we're still not sure if it's too much info or too little, and whether it really serves your needs in terms of the format and length.
Quickly
or if
scroll
we
through.
So any feedback you can give us, we'd appreciate.
So maybe just let us know in the chat. If I send this out with the notes, would you be willing to, or maybe I could put it up in like as a Google Doc. Any of you on the call today, would you be willing to kind of go in and provide comments and feedback so they could incorporate those and then release it as a kind of final vetted document? I know there are some rubric experts on this call.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a couple shores already. Oh, Jeff.
Great. Well, thank you guys. That's wonderful.
Yeah, and it's pretty concise.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Okay.
Okay. Well,
yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry,
Kelly.
I was just going to say I will. I'll post both of these to a Google Drive folder and send out the link after the call. And then, John, what kind of time horizon would you like to have people look at it within?
Oh, I'd love to get feedback in a week or 10 days, because since we're coming up on the winter season, this is a great time. I think wood stoves will be on people's minds a little bit more as they go out into homes. So should we say the 15th of the month?
The Ides of October?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll include that when I send the link. October 15th by the end of the day.
Yeah,
and
good.
Then,
yeah, that's a Friday.
And then once you have incorporated those, you'll let us know with the updated pieces?
Yeah.
Great.
Yep.
Oh, and Dale says protocols for blower door testing with a wood stove present should be included. Maybe not on the rubric, because that's, I almost think that might be a separate piece. Is that in the annex, John?
No, well, I think the protocol is simply that the wood stove can't be on. So for houses that use wood as a primary heater, it could be a bit tough for them not to heat their home the day that you are coming in to do a blower door test.
Yeah.
But I don't know enough about blower door tests. All I know is that it can be a problem to have a wood stove or a pellet stove on, and that folks just have to leave it off for the day.
Rana asked, how can we get a copy of the annex? Rana, that's in the BPI 1200 standards. So if you have that, it's just way at the end. I don't know if you can see it now.
It's Annex J. And the visual guide is a really good complement to that. But the Annex J was, vetted with various BPI experts and various Woodstove experts.
So it's just way down at the end here.
It's way down at the end, yeah. Oh, there it is. Yeah, you got it there.
Yeah. Good. Well, any other, I have to pull up the chat again. Looks like we have a path forward. Andy asked, are any programs replacing poorly functioning wood stoves with new EPA 2020 wood stoves, like you would replace a boiler or a furnace?
Well, sure. There are lots of local programs, especially on the West Coast. Washington State, they have an ongoing program. Oregon, certain cities and areas in California, of course, Fairbanks, Alaska. These places always have wood stove changeout programs if they are facing, air quality non-attainment issues. There's no federal changeout program, so they tend to be sometimes they're statewide, but more often they're just local.
Andy, does that answer your question satisfactorily? Did you want more details?
Oh yeah, I should have mentioned that. That's true. There is a 26% tax credit this year for wood stove. So if someone is replacing it either with WAP funds, which is pretty not very common, but if they have to do it themselves, this is a great year. This year, next year. Because you can, of course, for low-income people, a tax credit isn't so helpful because you have to put all the money up front and then wait till next April to claim it on your taxes. And then you have to pay enough taxes to make it worthwhile. But that's yeah. Thanks for mentioning that.
Okay, any other notes or questions for John before we kind of shift gears into a more tutorial portion of the call?
Hey, this is Michael.
Go ahead.
Oh, hey. So in Oregon, you mentioned non-attainment, and we had a mountain community just outside of Eugene. The city of Oak Ridge was kind of slated by the EPA as kind of being this wood smoke. A lot of it was like kind of topography and terrain, but smoke seemed to settle in that valley for some reason and became an issue. And there was a process where weatherization kind of teamed up with the EPA and several other local agencies to kind of address the issue. And part of what came out of that was a community firewood program talking about using and providing actually for this community clean and seasoned firewood, which a lot of that was educational about, not burning green wood and some other things. But also part of that was weatherization was related. We ended up weatherizing a lot of homes and swapping out a lot of these kind of non-EPA older wood stoves with ones that were pulling air from outside, like we mentioned here. And actually, there was a partnership too, where we actually stepped in with some DHPs in some cases, and then allowed those wood stoves to be used as kind of backup during super low temperature settings during the winter. So anyways, just thought I'd throw that in there, that sometimes it's not just about the equipment itself, but also what you're burning and how you're burning it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I worked with Oak Ridge, stayed in touch with them through that process. And in Fairbanks now, it's even illegal to sell wet wood. We found the education can be really tough. And if you really want to fix the problem, the fuel is an important place to start. And yeah, so that's and topography is a big reason. You know, out here in the East Coast, we don't have nearly as many inversions, or the inversions aren't as bad. So there have been some valleys up in New Hampshire, Keene, New Hampshire, a few areas where you get inversions, and and in those areas, really the goal of these programs is really to get people to switch from wood to heat pumps, or even a gas stove or a pellet stove. But most lower income people only want a new wood stove, so it's hard to switch them to a different fuel because they get the wood for free. Which is, you know, one of the big benefits of having wood is it provides you with energy security, that you don't have to pay any monthly bill, and the prices don't fluctuate so much.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just, you know, when you live in a forested area, sometimes that resource is readily available and oftentimes a lot more affordable for someone low income. So I think client education goes a long way in that setting, just making sure that people understand, you know, what fuel to use and so forth, along with good practices for maintaining that unit can go a long way.
Yeah, well, especially that's where, chimney sweeps, but energy auditors, that's why we'd really love to beef up whatever education functions auditors can provide to people to help them understand whether the stove is safe to use and whether their wood is green. I mean, it can go on and on. There's a lot of education, which is not, you know, the responsibility of an energy auditor, but to the extent that you can, it's really valuable.
And it looks like you aren't alone, Michael. Ross added in the chat that in Washington they have really similar experience around specific geography, and they're replacing stoves with heat pump installs coupled with weatherization, and working on kind of good firewood practices. Ross, are the installs, you said coupled with weatherization, do you have a separate funding source that's doing those, paying for those replacements?
Yeah, so we have our state's Department of Ecology and also a local clean air authority. So we've got a couple sources of funding. And, we replaced the wood stove and put in a DHP in every case where we're able to, and usually are funded to be able to do that. The location, you know, the geography is also subject to a lot of power outages, so we don't like backup heat.
And hopefully people maximize the heat pump in those areas.
Yeah, that was the hope, and it seems to be helping.
Yeah, good.
This was really good. Anything else around wood stoves?
All right, well, thanks, everyone. We'll get this stuff out to everyone, and we'll get a finalized version a little shortly after the 15th of the month.
Excuse me, this is Amy at NCAP. Can I just ask a question? There may have been a slide that showed this, but I couldn't see it. I'm just curious to know, like, what is the distribution of wood stove usage nationally? You mentioned that they would be more in northern states, but I'm just curious to know, because I know even I'm in Illinois, and I know that our LIHEAP matrix accounts for providing cords of wood if someone has wood as their fuel source. So I'm just wondering are there wood stoves in all 50 states, or?
Oh yeah, and the census, we can distribute that too. The census has good data, so it's a lot of the states you'd expect, but then there's places like West Virginia, Arkansas, Missouri, New Mexico. You know, any state that has mountains out west, certainly. So it's the whole Rockies. And it follows, and then at the county level, it follows poverty a little more closely. And what you find in poor homes is stoves are used 24/7, much more often. But Vermont, Maine are the two highest per capita. But when just Pennsylvania has a massive number of stoves simply because it's a big state and a cold state. I forget, I think Illinois is about average, maybe 1.5% use it as a primary heating device. And often, you have 10% using it as a secondary heating device. Nationally, 2% use it as a primary heating device now. And it's pretty stable. It goes up and down. The big weather events coming through these days make people buy wood stoves because people are afraid of losing power. And actually, yeah.
That was my next question is there's the presence of a wood stove as opposed to the wood stove being the primary heat source. And I was curious about the example that I don't know what state it came from, but they mentioned converting or replacing wood stoves with geothermal. And if anyone could explain that to me, because that just sounds would that be gas-fired geothermal, or would that be 100% electric geothermal? And how do you get around the barriers to fuel switching if you're going from wood stove, which could have a $0 fuel cost to begin with?
I think it's all air source heat pumps. I haven't heard of any ground source heat pumps.
Oh, I'm sorry. So my mistake.
Yeah, and I don't know how you get around fuel switching. That's.
This is Michael in Oregon again. So we have within the weatherization program, we have a fuel switching protocol. So it's really done on a case-by-case basis. In some cases, we've had, especially in rural areas, a lot of times what I get when I process those requests is, hey, we have someone who's really elderly who physically cannot cut wood and stack wood anymore, and we'd like to step in with a heat pump. We do not require folks to remove the replaced wood stove. We allow them to keep that as a backup because there's a limitation with an air source heat pump in terms of low temperature. So we'll allow that to remain in place as a backup heat source, especially I think we've already mentioned that in cases where power oftentimes is knocked out during winter months and that sort of thing. So it becomes kind of a safety net.
Okay, thanks.
All right, in case anyone didn't see, I did upload those files that we are to provide feedback on in the Google Drive, and I just pasted the link in the chat. So in case it takes me a little while to send out notes, any of you interested can go ahead and grab that link right there. Let me know if you have any troubles accessing. I know sometimes at state offices getting into Google Drive is hard. Excuse me. Yeah, looks like this is really good timing, John. So thank you for bringing this to the group.
Sure. And should feedback go to you, Kelly, or straight to me? I'm just typing in my email address.
Oh, yeah. So I was thinking people could comment directly on the documents, and then I could download them on the 15th, or you could just go in on the 15th and download. I was just thinking it would be easier to collect all the comments in one document instead of you getting a bunch of different things to have to merge together.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
So yeah, people can just add their comments in the Drive folders. Actually, it'll take me one more second to make sure they're the right format. And then I can either just send you a note, or you can go in and download them on the 15th.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, that'll be good. So I'm thinking 8 minutes probably isn't enough time to do a Camtasia tutorial. Rana, I will. John also just put it in the chat, so I'm not sure if you see it. It's a couple lines above your query, but I will email it to you if that's easier.
Okay.
Yeah, so Amanda agrees 8 minutes isn't enough time for a Camtasia tutorial. So I guess we can just knock off a little earlier today, unless you had any other questions. John, did you get all of your questions from the answered for the group for your kind of bigger initiative?
Yeah, I think so. I would love to be able to, if anyone wants to be, keep in better touch with us and these issues, if you just send me your email address, we have a specific email list that has to do with wood stoves and energy audits. And I would love to be able to keep corresponding with any of you who are interested.
Oh, Walter said, thank you, Walter, for checking out the Google Docs. I'll work on settings. Walter said he wasn't able to add comments, so I'll work on that as soon as we're done here. So hopefully, maybe you and I, Walter, could just check in on that to make sure.
Maybe I
okay.
have to send it to you in a different format, Kelly. Maybe it's probably maybe a PDF right now.
No, they're both Word docs. I think I just have the permissions set differently, so I'll fix that. It won't be hard.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody, and thanks, John. Thanks, Amanda, for being willing to do the Camtasia tutorial. If you're going to be on the November call, maybe we could take a rain check and do it then. We could fill in the extra time with maybe another tutorial of I know people were interested in the Activate using that software, so I'll try and put together a lineup. Thanks. Just on these more kind of online or recorded training tools that people can use to round out their more traditional training. So I look forward to talking to you all next month. Thanks so much for coming, and have a really good rest of your week. Caleb, you can stop recording now.